Yizhichan tuifa, which is often translated as one finger meditation or the one finger pushing technique. We start with the middle knuckle of the thumb braced against the index finger. Right? And that's to allow a little flexion and extension of that joint. But I don't produce a flexion extension with the thumb itself. I don't use those muscles. I let the thumb tip sink straight down into the beanbag or into the tissue of the patient. The hand is loosely closed, and I push away from me to create that very subtle flexion extension in the thumb. So when you practice, you want to feel that the joint is flexing. The force applied downward is primarily just the weight of the arm, plus that rhythmic flexion extension that comes from pushing and drawing back. And the push comes from primarily the elbow in terms of the actual movement of the hand. But in terms of the muscular support, it has to come from the core of the body. So I should feel my legs stable. Even if I'm practicing in the sitting position, I should feel that the abdominal core and the back are supporting it. My head is lifted, my shoulder is very relaxed and sinking down. And I want to be able to continue this flexion extension for a fairly long period of time without getting tired. So the shoulder has to be very relaxed. And I'll feel that my thumb is digging in. This beanbag's just a little bit on the loose side. A little fuller one would support the movement better, but I can just pat it out again. Ideally, you want to be able to do this movement 10-15 minutes without getting too tired. Right, and you can see I'm pushing away from me, pushing away from the center of my body. And that's why the tuifa, the pushing technique, even though the technique is very different from the standard tuifa pushing. Right, so it's a rhythmic and repetitive motion. I feel the whole hand and wrist rocking away from me, and that flexes the thumb. A related technique is rolling. It doesn't look very similar at first, but it has the same pushing away from me action. The simple rolling is really just pronation and supination of the forearm. And you can see the contact point is the whole dorsum of the hand as it rolls back and forth. If I do this as a push directly away from me, it allows me to support a little more easily from the body, but it can be done at a slight angle as well. All right, so the fist is closed and relaxed, or I can open the fingers a little bit. So as with the Yizhichan tuifa, it feels like I'm pushing out away from the body. And most of the movement's really going to come from the elbow, but be supported by the core and the legs. On this surface, I'm just pinning down the beanbag a little bit. And in the beginning, that actually helps because it gets my whole back involved. Right? It helps round my back, helps remind me to relax my shoulders. If I can't get the movement with one hand, I can use the other hand to roll the fist. The pronation is not that strong, but the supination is very strong. So try to roll all the way to the radial side of the hand towards the thumb. Even when you're doing it slowly and with two hands, try to make it rhythmic. Don't do one, stop, and then do another. Sometimes people do this, which isn't really the technique. It's back and forth. It's got a nice, strong, rhythmic feeling. The more sophisticated version starts with the wrist essentially straight and moves into slight flexion. Often the fingers are curled up when we begin, and the contact point is near the base of the little finger. And as it rolls, it's going to roll again towards the whole radial side of the dorsum, the back of the hand. So you see, as I go forward, I have a gentle wrist flexion. I don't want to force it. It's important to stay very relaxed. Again, I'm pushing away from me. This application of rolling makes it easier to feel that sort of direct push. There's another common variation of rolling which uses the back of the knuckles. So I go from gentle extension, the hands rounded, fingers are essentially straight, into full flexion. Not just the fingers, but even the wrist. The thumb is not involved in this one. Then I get at least into the flat, the lowest section of the fingers. If I'm a little higher, then I can get the knuckles in, those bottom knuckles as well. Again, it should be even and rhythmic. Opening, right, slight extension of the fingers, and then full flexion, including the wrist. These are all considered swaying techniques because of the movement of the arm and the way the body supports that swaying movement. And the last of these is kneading. When I knead, say I knead with the palm, my hand should not slide over the beanbag. So my hand remains in contact with the surface of the beanbag, and what I feel like I'm manipulating are the beans inside the beanbag. Right, grinding them up. Between your rolling and your kneading, you gradually grind those beans into powder. You can open up the beanbag and refill it after that. We should try both directions. You can also practice kneading with a knuckle, right? Either the point of the knuckle or a knuckle flat at the back of the finger, or a thumb. I suggest a supported thumb if you do the thumb. And again, my finger isn't sliding over the surface. That would be another technique, round rubbing. So I don't feel like I'm manipulating the surface of the beanbag, but grinding up those beans. Like breaking up adhesions and stasis in the tissues, the subcutaneous tissues. Palm kneading. And it's considered a swaying technique because it still comes from the elbow. The elbow is extending and flexing a little bit, supported by the body, and I can feel the whole body rocking a little bit, just like I did when I was doing my rolling. I feel like the body's rocking into it, so some of it's coming from the hip a little bit and the legs. Get the hips involved. A lot of different surfaces of the hand can be used for the kneading. I was just doing the whole palm, but you can use the major thenar or minor thenar surfaces, or the whole heel of the hand. There's another variation when I use the whole heel of the hand of just shaking the hand back and forth like waving. This is sometimes referred as an oscillation. It's really a form of kneading. And again, sort of pinned my hand against the surface of the beanbag, and I'm working the beans underneath the surface. So I can do some kneading with the major thenar, the base of the thumb, minor thenar, which is a little heavier, but I want to feel my abdominal core and my abs involved a little bit. Feel the support of my legs. And those are all the major swaying techniques.